This happened about 9 years ago. I was 23, fresh out of semester I'd taken off from school. Not for anything dramatic, just that quiet kind of burnout where everything stops feeling real, and you can't explain why. I'd been living at my parents' house in Flagstaff for a few months, working part-time at a hardware store, trying to figure out what came next. My older brother had just gotten engaged. My best friend from college had moved to Portland and stopped calling as much. It was one of those stretches of life that feels like you're waiting for something, but you're not sure what, and the waiting is starting to feel permanent. I tell people I went on that drive to clear my head. That's true, but the fuller truth is that I've been feeling invisible for so long that part of me wanted to go somewhere that wouldn't notice me either. Somewhere flat and old and indifferent. I picked Route 66, heading west out of Flagstaff. Not the whole thing, just a stretch, a night drive, a few hours out, a few hours back. I'd done it before in daylight, years earlier with my dad. I thought I knew what I was getting into. I still think about that drive, and I still don't have an explanation for what happened on it. It was late October, a Tuesday, I think, or maybe a Wednesday, the kind of weeknight where you feel certain no one else is awake. I left the house around 10:30, told my mom I was going for a drive, and she just nodded without looking up from her book. I had a quarter tank of gas and stopped at a station on the edge of town to fill up, grabbed a coffee in a paper cup, and pulled onto the highway just before 11. The weather was clear when I left. Cold, but dry. Flagstaff sits above 7,000 feet, so even late October can have that sharp alpine bite, the kind that makes your nose run the moment you step outside. But the sky was open. I could see stars. I remember thinking that at least. I remember thinking it was a good night for a drive. Route 66 west of Flagstaff cuts through the high desert in a way that feels cinematic in the daytime and a little unsettling at night. It's 2 lanes most of the stretch, with long flat sections that go straight as a ruler for miles. The highway passes through old tourist stops that are mostly shuttered now, places that still have their signs but no lights in the windows. There are pull-offs and unmarked dirt roads that disappear into scrub on either side, and for long stretches there's nothing at all. No billboards, no streetlights, just a road and the dark land on both sides, and whatever your headlights catch. I had a playlist going. Nothing too heavy, some ambient stuff, some older folk rock. I had my phone mounted on the dash for GPS, even though I didn't really need it. I knew the road. I wasn't going anywhere specific, just west towards Seligman, maybe as far as Peach Springs, with a loose plan to turn around somewhere around midnight and be home by 2. The first 40 minutes were exactly what I wanted them to be, long and quiet and mine. Then I hit the fog. I want to be precise about this, because it matters. The fog appeared just past the turnoff for Parks, a tiny community about 20 miles out of Flagstaff. One moment the road was clear. The next, my headlights were catching white. Not gradually. Not a slow drift rolling in from somewhere. It was just there, suddenly like I had driven through a curtain. Dense ground fog, sitting low and thick across both lanes, stretching out as far as my lights reached. This is not unusual for that area. The high desert can do strange things with temperature, and that time of year, that time of night, valley fog is possible. I slowed down, flipped to low beams, so I wasn't bouncing the glare back into my own eyes. I've driven in fog before. It's uncomfortable but manageable. What I noticed first, and told myself not to think too hard about, was that the fog wasn't moving. When you drive through fog, it flows, it shifts. You see the wisps break apart against the car. You feel like you're passing through something. But this fog sat completely still. My car was cutting through it at 40 miles an hour, and nothing around me was disturbing it at all. There were no eddies, no drift, no turbulence at the edges of my headlights. It was probably just the density of it. I told myself, when fog gets heavy enough, it can look static even when it isn't. That didn't really make sense, though. Fog is still air. It moves with air, and there was no wind that night. I'd noticed at the gas station, the flags along the awning were hanging dead still. So there was nothing to move the fog, yes, but there was also nothing to hold it in place the way it was. I kept driving. I told myself it was fine. About 10 minutes in, I'd slowed to around 30. I passed a pull-off on the right side of the road, just a gravel shoulder, widening into a small clearing. There was a truck parked there, old, dark-colored, maybe dark green or brown. No lights on, no one visible inside from what I could see. I didn't stop. People pull off to sleep on long drives. People park out there to stargaze, though with the fog there was nothing to see that night. I kept going. But maybe half a mile later, I heard something. It came from the road behind me. A sound like metal scraping slowly against asphalt, low-pitched, deliberate, rhythmic, not fast. One drag, a pause, another drag. I turned the music off and checked my mirrors. My taillights lit up a wall of white behind me. I couldn't see 20 feet back. I couldn't see the road I'd just come from. I told myself it was probably the sound carrying strangely in the cold air. Sound does weird things in fog. It can bounce, it can stretch, it can make distance meaningless. Whatever was making that scraping sound could have been a mile back. It could have been a piece of signage half fallen off a post, dragging in a wind gust. I couldn't feel inside the car. It stopped before I could convince myself either way. I turned the music back on, lower this time. 20 minutes further, the GPS lost signal. That's not unusual out there. The cell coverage drops in and out through that whole corridor. I wasn't worried about navigation. I knew the road, but I noticed that because the screen went dark and the dashboard felt suddenly emptier, and I realized I'd been using that small glowing rectangle as a kind of company without knowing it. I checked the clock. 12:09 a.m. I decided I'd go another 5 minutes and then turn around. The fog was still not moving, and then I saw the lights, off to the left of the highway, maybe a quarter mile into the desert, low to the ground. Not headlights. These were smaller, more amber-toned. 2 of them, side by side, very still, about 4 feet off the ground, I estimated. They weren't sweeping or blinking. They were just on, pointed in my direction, unmoving. I slowed almost to a stop. The distance made it hard to gauge size. Could have been an ATV. Could have been some kind of work vehicle parked out on a service road. There are power line access roads and old ranch roads that branch off the highway out there. People do use them, even at night. But there was no road visible where those lights were, just open scrub. I watched them for maybe 20 seconds. They didn't move. They didn't change. And then I realized I'd been sitting almost completely still in the middle of the highway with my foot barely on the brake. And if anyone came up behind me in this fog, they would hit me at speed without any warning at all. I accelerated slowly and kept going. In my mirror, those lights stayed visible for another minute or so. Same position, same brightness. Then they were just gone. Not like they drove away. Not like they turned off. Just gone. The way something disappears when it passes behind the edge of what you can see. I told myself, ranch vehicle with a CB radio, and no reason to explain itself to me. But the lights had been still. The whole time I'd watched them, they had not moved at all. The fog had not moved. Nothing out there was moving except me. I turned around at a wide spot in the road a few minutes later. I don't know exactly where I was. The GPS was still dark. I just found a place wide enough to swing the car around and pointed myself back east, back toward Flagstaff. That's when the smell hit, sharp and acrid, like burning plastic or electrical insulation. Not a campfire smell, not the dry grass smell of distant brush burning. Something chemical. It came into the vents and made my eyes water, and I cut the cabin airflow and cracked a window instead, which was immediately a mistake because the cold hit me like a wall, and the smell was stronger outside the car, not weaker. I rolled the window back up. The smell faded after a minute or two. I was moving faster now. I bumped back up to 45 even though the fog was still just as thick, because I wanted to be somewhere else. I was watching the road carefully, both lanes, making sure nothing was ahead of me. I was not watching the pull-off when I passed it again. I only caught in my peripheral vision, as I went by, that same gravel clearing where the truck had been parked. The truck was gone. I couldn't be certain. I barely saw it. Maybe I'd misjudged the location. Maybe I'd already passed it. Maybe the fog was distorting my sense of distance and time. But from what I saw in that half-second glimpse, the clearing was empty, and where the truck had been there was something on the ground. A shape, dark, horizontal, too irregular to be equipment, too still to be a person. I did not stop. I know that sounds bad. I've thought about that choice for 9 years. But I was alone in the dark in heavy fog on an empty highway, and something felt deeply, profoundly wrong, and my body made that choice before my mind could weigh it. My foot pressed the gas harder, and I drove. I was at 55 miles an hour by then. Fog or no fog. Something hit the car, the passenger side. Hard. Single impact. Like a weight thrown. The car lurched. My coffee cup hit the floor. I screamed, short, ugly, involuntary. Then I was just driving. Both hands. White-knuckled. Engine loud. No music. Just road and white. And the sound of my own breathing. I did not stop. I did not look back. I did not slow down. I ran through what I needed to know while I drove. Is the car handling right? Yes. Tires holding? Yes. Warning lights? None. The car was fine. I was not fine, but I was moving, and moving was all I needed to be doing. The fog began to thin around what I think was the park's turn-off again. Gradually this time, not suddenly, the white pulled back from the edges of my headlights, and within 5 minutes I was out of it entirely. Open highway. Stars above. The road perfectly clear ahead of me. I didn't slow down until I hit the first streetlight on the western edge of Flagstaff. I pulled into a gas station that was still open, fluorescent and buzzing and completely ordinary. I sat in the parking lot for a few minutes with the engine running and the heater going. My hands were still shaking when I finally got out to check the car. There was a dent in the passenger door panel. Not a scratch. A dent. The kind that requires weight behind it. The kind that does not come from a rock kicked up by your own tire. I don't know what made it. I drove home and went to bed and didn't sleep. I told my mom in the morning that a truck clipped me on the highway and I didn't get the plates. She was annoyed about the insurance, and I let her be annoyed, and I didn't say anything else about that night for almost a year. I looked into it after some time had passed. Not obsessively, but some. I searched for incidents on that stretch of 66. Accidents, disappearances, anything. You find things if you look, but you can never quite know what's real and what isn't. There are stories about that road, like there are stories about every long American highway. Most of them are folklore. Most of them are embellishment. I don't know what mine is. I don't know what those lights were. I don't know what was in that clearing. I don't know what hit my car, or whether the truck was ever really there at all, or what was making that slow scraping sound on the road behind me in the dark. And the fog that sat like something poured into the valley and simply left there, the fog that didn't swirl or shift or respond to a car moving through it at highway speed. 9 years later, that is still the detail I cannot explain away. That's the image that finds me sometimes when I'm trying to sleep. My headlights cutting into white that will not move for me, that won't behave the way things are supposed to behave, that just sits there as if it's waiting for something I never gave it. I still drive at night sometimes, but not alone, and not on roads I can't see the end of. And when I'm in regular fog, normal fog, the kind that rolls and drifts and moves away fog as opposed to, I always find myself watching the edges of my headlights very carefully, just checking, just making sure it's moving.